Welcome to European Journeys. This is the second stage of a series in which we explore the Christianization of Norway. And for this stage, we are going to the southwest of the country, to a county called Rogaland. And in particular, we are going to explore a town named Haugesund. It is a town that that became a town, in fact, received the town status in 1854. It grew up significantly in those years. Before that, it was a rural area, that place. But nevertheless, there is a testimony there of events that happened much before the time when Haugesund became an official town. And there is, in fact, a place there that we are going to visit that points back to the 9th and 10th centuries, and that is a burial mound. It's a burial mound named Harald's Haugen, that is the mound of Harald. Now, who is this Harald? In fact, he is one of the most famous kings of Norway, of the whole history of Norway, and his name was Harald Fairhair. He lived between the 9th and the 10th centuries, and he is known to be the first king of the United Norway. And in fact, on top of the mound today, there is an obelisk that was inaugurated in the year 1872, and that was the year of the millennium of the unification of the country. Now, Harald is not only the man who was the first to rule over the unified Norway, but he also greatly influenced the Christianization of the country. And that in spite of the fact that he never adopted Christianity for himself, let alone made his nation an officially Christian nation. So how is it that he influenced the Christianization of the country when in fact he seemed to have nearly nothing to do with the Christian faith? Well, that's what we are going to discover in a few minutes, but before that we want to have a small overview of his life. Harald Fairhair was born from a king of a small kingdom, the king of Vestfold, named Halvdan. That was the name of the king. And that kingdom of Vestfold was located near what is today Oslo, the capital of Norway. And he was the son, and his mother was Ragnhild. And she was the granddaughter of the king of Jutland, which is in modern-day continental Denmark. And as we will see, that will be important. It's an important fact to know about Harald Fairhair in light of the Christianization of the country. Now, his father, Halvdan, died when he was only 10 years old. He was only a boy. And so he became king of that small kingdom of Vestfold. But as a young adult, he fell in love with the daughter of the king of Hordaland named Gyda. And he asked her if she would marry him. And she accepted, but only at the condition that she would offer him, as it were, a united kingdom of Norway. If he would invade, that is, all the small petty kingdoms of Norway and bring them under his rule, then she would marry him. Well, he was not discouraged at all by this request, and he made it his mission to unify the kingdom of Norway through military campaigns, obviously, and he succeeded. And in fact, therefore, in the year 872, he was able to marry Gyda and then become the first king of the unified Norway. Now, he's named Fairhair, in fact, because when he began his military campaigns, he promised himself that he would not cut his hair until he would win the last battle before the unification of Norway. And so he ended up having quite pretty long hair, and that's why he's named Harald Fairhair. So that's a bit of an overview of his life. But now let's look a little bit at why he influenced the Christianization of the country. As I said, he was not a Christian at all, and but was largely shaped by the Christian worldview. And so as a pagan king, the first reason why he influenced the Christianization of Norway has to do with the laws of the country. Now, he was a pagan king. Norway was under the pagan worldview. The way to see the world was pagan. And according to the pagan worldview, the king was someone who had the right to rule because he was superior to everyone else, because he was a descendant of a god, of a pagan god, that is. And being a descendant of a pagan god, he had the right to impose his law, or the law that presumably he would have received from the gods or from the god. He had the right to impose that law to the rest of the country. And so he ruled as a pagan ruler. He imposed his law. But as you look a little bit more carefully at the law that he imposed over his land, not everything was very, very good, but nevertheless, several points really came close to the Christian biblical ideal of what the law of a nation should be. For example, there were laws that really defended the poor and the destitute. He also had quite an acute understanding of what's right and wrong, and even also an acute understanding that the law had to be obeyed by everyone, including the people who were close to him. And in fact, it happened that the son of one of his friends, of his close friends, an associate, had broken the law, but he still judged him according to that law. That comes very close to the Christian ideal. Now, why is it that he would have adopted laws, many of them, that came closer to the Christian ideal? Is it just a casual? Well, maybe not. As I said, his great-grandfather on his mother's side was a king of Jutland, and that king had adopted Christianity already, Harald Klak. And so it is very possible, even probable, that the Christian faith went through the children of Harald Klak, and so he might have received some Christian instruction from his mother Ragnhild. Nothing is sure really, but we can maybe assume that it is for that reason that the king Harald Fairhair adopted laws that came close to what the Christian worldview would be. So that's one reason why he influenced the Christianization of Norway. The second reason and the third reason are very, very indirect, but nevertheless had a huge impact on the nation. The first one has to do with the era known as the Viking expansion. It was the beginning of the time when the Vikings began to travel outside of Norway to other parts of Europe, in particular to the British Isles, and we know that they caused a lot of destruction wherever they went, bringing people to subjection. And in most of the lands where they were, in fact, where they went, in fact, these lands had been Christianized already, in particular the British Isles, as I said. And what we see in history is that they slowly but surely adopted the faith of the people they had subjected. And that is quite a fact, in fact, of history. Bit by bit, the Norwegians began to adopt the Christian faith, those at least that the Vikings that had gone abroad. But that didn't have much of an influence back in Norway straight away. A bit later it would, but not straight away. But the third point, the third reason why Harald Fairhair influenced, even though indirectly, influenced the Christianization of Norway, has to do with the inheritance of his kingdom. What Harald had decided is that his kingdom would be divided among all his sons. Now, between Gyda and his old age, he would have many other sons from different wives, and he decided to give the land, to separate the land in small portions for each of his sons. But one of his sons was named Eric, and decided to, in fact, fight all his brothers and kill them. And that's why he inherited the name of Eric Blood Axe. You can imagine what type of death he would inflict on his brothers. Eric Blood Axe, or Blodøkse in Norwegian. And he wanted to be the sole ruler over the kingdom of his father. So his father, nevertheless, towards the end of his life, married another lady and had another son. His son would be named Håkon. But, of course, Harald realized that his son was in danger. Like all his other sons who had been killed by Eric, Håkon was in great danger. And so he decided very early in the life of his son to send him to be raised by the court of England. And the king at the time was King Aethelstan, and King Aethelstan was a Christian king as well. So Håkon was raised in a Christian house there in England. And we will discover in the next stage how that will impact the history of Norway, the later history of Norway. So 3 different reasons why Harald Fairhair influenced the Christianization of Norway quite indirectly. Harald Fairhair never adopted Christianity for himself, let alone for the Kingdom of Norway. But as we see, God's providence was there all the time, even behind pagan rulers. He used the rule of pagan rulers to advance his kingdom really in Norway. And this was the case under Harald Fairhair. I'm Cedric Placentino. See you next time for another stage of European Journeys.